All right. Well, Lynn, thank you so much for joining us again. I'm really excited to have you back. You did our institute for us, and we're still hearing people that rave about it. And so, one of the things we're wondering is what does it mean when we're dealing with kids where we're seeing heightened anxiety? What does it mean to show up where they are? Particularly, how are adults potentially contributing or not contributing to the increased levels of anxiety and dysregulation that we're seeing in kids?
Yeah. Well, so I mean, we know that there is a very strong social component to anxiety. It's very contagious, and stress is contagious. And we've all had that experience. You're hanging out with somebody who's super stressed. The example I often give to teachers is that, you know how you've got your students and they're getting ready for a test, and there's a bunch of kids and they think they're good. And then somebody arrives and says, hey, did you guys study this? Or did you guys study that? And then suddenly the whole stress level of the group goes up. The same thing happens when we're interacting with kids. And so our goal is to show up in a way that has a lot of warmth, for one. I think that we underestimate the value of warmth, the value of humor, and then the value of just modeling your own ability to problem solve. Because what I see very often is when a child is struggling, or let's just say when a kid is freaking out, the adults around believe that if a child is freaking out, that means that it's more of an emergency, that the anxiety is worse, that they need to abandon the things they know and come up with some other way of managing it. And that's just not the case. I talk about dogs and temper tantrums, that when you have a little dog having a rah, 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 people are like, oh, that's just a little dog. And when you have a big dog, people think, oh, that's a big dog. Well, you handle it in the same way. If you have a
Hmm.
temper tantrum and it's a 2-year-old, people are like, oh, that's a temper tantrum. If you have a temper tantrum and it's a 27-year-old grown up, then we're like, oh, that's a bigger problem. It's the same problem, it's just louder. And what happens is that we begin to act as if it's a different problem or it's an emergency. So, really understanding that a freak out is a freak out, that anxiety is anxiety, that symptoms are symptoms. And what we need to do, first of all, is that we need to know the language that we're going to use, which I talked about a lot with your group when I was there, and that we need to model that this is not an emergency. And
Hmm.
then the other thing that I think is way undervalued, way underused is movement.
Hmm.
Because when we show up and a kid is struggling, they're dysregulated, they're freaking, whatever language you want to use, oftentimes we move into this place where we want to calm everything down. And so we go low like this. That does not work for a lot of kids. This is an energized system. So we don't want to be up here freaking out with them, but we also don't want to make calmness and stillness what we're going for. We want to be right here. We want to be available, we want to be warm, and we want to say, "Hey, how about if we move a little bit? Let's go for a walk. Let's move our body." Rather than trying to get everything like this. Stillness and calmness, and the other language that we use sometimes, not effective for this energized system.